Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making beef and gravy that is a very simple, quick, easy dinner that you can serve a whole lot of ways. This video was actually requested something using canned beef. Now this canned beef you can use pretty much in any recipe that you would use fresh beef in. It comes in chunks, packed in water. The canned meats are really good, and I know a lot of folks are getting them now from different places. And also a lot of times the grocery stores will have buy one get one free sales, and you can find them at the discount grocery stores and the warehouse grocery stores cheaper than you can get fresh meat. And we're all having to save as much money as possible. So we're going to get on with this, and it is really, really easy. Just in a skillet or even a pot if you want to. We're going to turn this on some about medium heat, and I'm going to just heat this up and make a gravy. Now I'm not going to drain it because it doesn't have a ton of sodium in it. If you're on a low sodium diet though, you might want to drain it, and you might want to be a little pickier about how you season it. You know, that's just up to you, but we're just going to use 1 can of the canned beef. We're going to use some cornstarch to thicken our gravy with. I've got a little onion powder here I'm going to use to boost the flavor. And also, if you have it, you can put some bouillon in it. I'm using some Better Than Bouillon. The bouillon cubes work. Even if you save the packets out of your ramen noodles, you can use those in this. You know, if you like made a bunch of ramen noodles for your kids and then you had a few extra packets because you didn't want to put all that salt in there, or if you save half a packet, if you live alone and you only put half a packet in them when you make them to reduce the sodium, you can use the other half a packet of it in this. So anyway, what I'm going to start with, and you might want a little salt and pepper too. I'm going to put a little pepper in it, probably not any salt because this stuff all has salt in it already. I'm going to put my onion powder in my skillet first. And what that's going to do is in just a second, it's going to toast it. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's literally turning brown almost as it hits the skillet. And that's going to give me that caramelized onion flavor without having to chop onions. Now, certainly if you got a fresh onion, chop it up and put it in here. And that is just about as long as it takes. Right there. It was white when I put it in, and you can see it's kind of brownish yellow now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my beef to it. Try not to slop it all over your stove. There's not a lot of fat in this. You can, if you want to, add a little fat to it, add a little butter or something like that. And I'm going to bust up some of these chunks a little bit. Now, these cans, it is like a 12-ounce can. And it says that there's 3.5 servings of meat in here. And I have talked about this in videos before. The FDA has decreased the amount of meat that is considered a serving. And when times were so tough in the past and even before modern food, meat was more of a seasoning in our food than it was a main course. I think they consider 2 ounces of meat now to be a serving. And that's about what it was when I was a kid, honestly. It was about 2 ounces. So we don't need an 8 or 16-ounce steak or an 8-ounce hamburger to get a serving of meat to get enough protein. I mean, you know, I like meat. I'm definitely a meat eater, and I do enjoy a big thick hamburger and stuff, but we don't always have that. So especially if you're making something like this, you could feed a family of 4 with 1 can of this beef. You just have to make more gravy. Now for our gravy, like I said, I'm going to add a little bouillon to it. There is a little broth in this. If you have beef broth, like maybe you've gotten beef broth somewhere on sale, you can certainly make your gravy with beef broth. The Better Than Bouillon, I think about a teaspoon is supposed to do a cup of broth. If you have cubes, 1 cube is supposed to do a cup of broth. So, you know, kind of measure that according to how much you're making. And I'm going to dissolve that before I add my cornstarch and my water. Now, when you're measuring your cornstarch, you want about a tablespoon of cornstarch per cup. So I've got some broth that was in with my beef, and I've got about 1.5 cups of water here. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of cornstarch in mine. If you need 3 or 4 cups of gravy, you just add a tablespoon of cornstarch or so per cup of gravy that you're making, and that will thicken it. Now, that's not going to thicken it quite like breakfast gravy. It's going to thicken it like a pourable dinner gravy, and that's what we're going for here. And you want to dissolve your cornstarch in your cold water before you add it to your beef. My skillet's already boiling over here, and I'm telling y'all, this is quick. I've been yapping the whole time I've been cooking it, so you'll get it kind of in real time here. I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper to mine. You could add hot sauce or something to this if you wanted to, make it a real hot gravy. That's just kind of up to you. I do like pepper in my beef. I just like those flavors together. When I make a hamburger, I add extra pepper on it after I've cooked it. And once this is boiling and we've stirred our cornstarch into our water, we are just going to add it and stir as we add. And when it comes back to a boil, it will, the white color that you see there where we added it will kind of disappear, and it will turn brown and be kind of clear, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for like that color that you get in a jar of brown gravy or something. But this is a whole lot cheaper than a jar of gravy. And the gravy literally is just the bouillon and cornstarch. That's all you need to make it. And it's much cheaper than buying the jars. So don't buy that jarred gravy anymore. You do kind of want to stir this as it's coming back to a boil, because what will happen is it will thicken on the bottom, and then you'll get lumps in your gravy, and nobody likes lumpy gravy. Okay, now you can see the whites going away, and our gravy is turning a nice rich brown color. It's not quite boiling yet. You do want to bring it all the way to a boil. You also want to keep in mind that, like any gravy, even the brown gravy is going to thicken up as it cools. So when you get it to a boil, you might think, gee, this is kind of thin. Maybe I ought to mix me up a little more cornstarch and water and add it. Now, if you decide to add a little more, make it thicker, make sure you dissolve that cornstarch in cold water and then add it to this. Don't just put the cornstarch in it. But it is going to thicken up some. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this over something. Either an open-faced sandwich that you can serve with potato chips or French fries. Or remember I told you I like to make extra baked potatoes, and because it's an easy meal later on. You can put it over a baked potato. You can put it over some pasta, rice, or mashed potatoes, and just serve it with some vegetables. So you can make a lot of different meals with this recipe. And it's something that your family will enjoy because it's a comfort food. That thick, rich brown gravy with the beef, with potatoes, pasta, rice, or even bread. It's delicious, and it's one of those things that just kind of warms you up in the wintertime. And it's a meal that you can get on the table, you know, on a weeknight when the kids are going to this practice and that practice, or they got a ton of homework, or you got to go to church on Wednesday after you get them out of school and get the homework done. This is a good one for those nights. Okay, we're starting to get some bubbles now. We've got the right color. You don't want to bring it to like a big rolling boil. It will also get thicker the longer you boil it, just like flour gravy with a roux will. I think this is much easier to make than gravy with a roux. Of course, gravy with a roux is pretty easy too, and we've got up videos for that. So once it comes to a boil, turn the heat off. And now you can see it's thin. It's thicker than the water was, but it's very thin. That's what you want. You don't want it to be pasty at this point, because it is going to thicken up. And if you are adding it over pasta, rice, or potatoes, it's going to get thicker still yet from the starch in those foods. And it'll thicken up a little bit even once you add it to your open face sandwich. You can see how thin it is. It's barely thicker than the water. I do get a trail when I stir it, a little bit of a trail. That's all you want. Now, try it once before you add more cornstarch and thicken it. But if you decide that this is not thick enough to your liking, like I said, you can add a little more cornstarch, dissolve it in water, or when you make it, you can just add a little more cornstarch the next time you make it. But if you want to get it thicker, if you let it cool for a minute and it's not thick enough to suit you, you can dissolve cornstarch in water, heat it back up, because you can heat it up as many times as you want to. Gravy is pretty forgiving, and make it thicker if you want it thicker. But all you're going to do with this once you make it is, like I said, put it over pasta, rice, or potatoes. And it's an excellent dinner. Serve it with some vegetables. Make sure you got plenty of gravy on the plate. And if you're making it just for 1 or 2 people, cut the gravy back to a cup instead of 2 cups. And it'll feed 1 or 2 people like that. Over the baked potato, you got to try it over a baked potato. Good old mashed potatoes too. Or make an open face beef sandwich. Hot roast beef sandwich. And in a restaurant, you would pay, my goodness, $10 for an open face roast beef sandwich. And you can make one, make enough for several people out of a can of this beef. If I was just doing roast beef sandwiches, probably I would cut my gravy back to 1 cup and I would make 2 sandwiches. But that's all there is to it. Simple, quick, I mean like literally dinner in less than 10 minutes. Before we go, I know times are really turbulent right now. There's a lot of stuff going on and it's making people very uneasy. So I want to leave you with Jesus' words from John 14:27. Peace I leave with you, and my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, I give unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Please continue to pray for peace in Israel, and pray for the people that are victims of the tragedy in Maine. I mean, that it's just terrible. But we as Christians have to keep hope and continue to pray about these things, because our God is big enough to comfort all those who are hurting, and He is big enough to handle all those situations. So keep praying. Don't lose your hope. Don't lose your faith. And don't lose your peace. Let your heart not be troubled or afraid. I want to thank you so very much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share all of our videos with your friends. And until next time, remember to put God first.